Welcome to Voices of Dissent, where we listen to true stories of activists who might have broken the law to do what is right. So how did you get started with it then?
Well, I studied biology and journalism, and afterwards I started immediately working for a TV show in Israel, an investigative TV show, which sent me undercover to work in places and things like that.
And after being an undercover investigator for this TV program, he switched to being an undercover investigator for animals. So how does it feel to be an undercover investigator?
I have to say, I find investigations enchanting. It's something very interesting, very exciting about the work, about the results, but also about testing your own personality or having the ability to stretch your own character. Because once you get into a character of someone else, which is not you, you can stretch your limits in a way that I couldn't do before I was an investigator. So when I put the camera on, I can be someone a little bit different than myself. And I think that's interesting. You know, I wake up every day, I'm Ronan Bar. It's not that bad. Maybe it's not that good also. Yeah, but okay, another day. Suddenly I get the chance to wake up and be someone which is a little bit else. And I think that's magic. I think that's interesting. And it's introspective because you get a look at yourself when you're someone else. So I always found undercover work, even before I did it for animals, very interesting. And this is part of the reason why I went to do it.
And how would you advise others to get started with it?
So the way to start, I think, is starting small. Think about something which has some kind of value, even if it's small, and do it. It can be just going to a local dairy farm, tell them some kind of a story that will get you to film something there. Maybe it's the separation of the mother from the calf. Maybe it's just a regular day. Maybe just an interview when you sit with the farmer and talk to them. And within all those questions, try to ask some questions that might lead him also to say something interesting about the animals. Start slowly, start gradually, start with something little, and you will feel if that's something which excites you and you love it, or it's something that you want to get as far away as you can. And if it does excite you, you can continue in doing one more small step and one more small step and get into it.
So now you work for Sentient and you help people become undercover investigators. How does Sentient help with that?
So Sentient, what we do is we customize tools that help people in the undercover space, whether they're already investigators or they want to get into the space. So for example, one of the tools that we created is the camera on animal. It's a small cellular camouflage camera, and you get to see the last day of the animal through his eyes. And it's very different from what you currently have, because when I did investigations as a journalist and as an animal rights activist, I always told stories about facilities, about industries, about practices, but it was never about a specific individual which has a name. When I studied journalism, I wanted to do a story about farm animals in one of our assignments, and the teacher said, you cannot do that because you don't have anyone to interview. You cannot interview the animals. So for me, every camera is an interview because you bear witness to an individual animal for hours. For 7 hours, I bore witness to Tom, which is a calf which was slaughtered in the biggest abattoir in Israel. For 7 hours.
So the camera lasts for 7 hours? It has that long of a battery life?
Yes, and you can also put on standby.
Wow, that's really powerful. So how far can you be away from the camera?
You can put the camera in Australia and I can be in Israel monitoring your camera because it's cellular. This is the thing with this method. You don't need to be close. You don't need to have undercover skills. If you can pet an animal, you can put a camera on it. You will be able to see the video live. And it's very different because it's live. You don't know what's going to happen. You're with the animal as he enters the slaughter line. As something happens, you don't know what's going to happen next. There's a lot of uncertainty, and you see everything from the point of view of the one. So when I worked in slaughterhouses and abattoirs, it's a moving line. You don't get so much attached to a particular animal because it's always the next animal and the next animal, the next animal. It's the masses of animals. But here, I got more connected to Tom, this animal that I followed for several hours, that I did even working in abattoir and trying even sometimes when no one sees to pet animals. Because I'm always with him through his point of view. It's not a moving line, it's just the one. And this is how the animals experience their last day and their lives as the one from their point of view.
Can you explain more about how it is for the animals to go into the slaughterhouse, what it looks like?
Yeah, so I can tell about Tom. When he was put in the truck, which drove into the slaughterhouse, of course the trucks are very dense, but what you see there is fishes coming from the upper floor to the downer floor.
Because they have 2 floors in these trucks?
Yeah, they have 2 floors. Some trucks only have 1, but mostly they have 2 floors in Israel. And when animals are scared, a lot of times they shit, and then you see the fishes coming from the up to the down, and you see them on the faces of Tom's friends and also on him.
They move closer and closer until they reach their final destination.
I think the interesting thing with Tom is he was, unfortunately, of course, he was slaughtered. He's an animal which it looks like he has a lot of self-confidence, or he's very curious. You see that his head is up and he's always looking at other animals and always looking outside and trying to understand what is going on in the truck and even later in the slaughterhouse. A lot of animals have their heads down and they're very scared and they're like trying to run away from the situation, not to see what's happening. But he's the other way around. But then when he enters the slaughter line, suddenly you see the change. The fear is too much for him, and he's always swallowing his saliva. You can really see how he swallows the saliva, and you can see he's scared of very small things. For example, there was a worker who just passed by him. He didn't do anything. He didn't touch him. He just went by him, and you can see how scared Tom was, swallowing his saliva and trying to go back. He looks at the camera while he's trying to go back. The camera is on his back, and he just can't. He just can't because they closed the gate on him. You see that some animals express their fears in different ways. For example, I bore witness to Danny, which is a calf that was born in the Israeli dairy industry. Tom was brought from Portugal, by the way, to Israel with the live export. We know that by the ear in his tag. But Danny was born in the dairy industry, and he's a very frightening animal. So he gets scared from everything. So the worker just had to touch his ear, just gently touch his ear to make him run in the slaughter line and move forward. But the animal in front of him was the other way around. He was so scared he froze and he didn't move. So they brought the electric frog and they shoved it in his anus again and again and again until he moved. That was the animal in front of him. So you see different animals respond differently to fear, to anxiety, to the hard situation they are in.
So when you first put the camera on Danny, was he already scared back then, or was he more relaxed?
Yeah, he was quite a scared animal, not like Tom, which is very curious and his head is up and he's looking. Mm-hmm. Also, Tom came to another animal which had his horn broken and sniffed his horn. By the way, a lot of animals also put their heads on each other. Mm. Sheep also. So Danny was much more scared the whole way, but also you see that once you get closer and closer in the slaughter line, it's the most scary place, I think, because it's very narrow and you don't have anywhere to go. I think you can see the whole process. I mean, the animals don't have any freedom during their lives. They don't have any power, even not over their bodies, which is, genetically manipulated for the profit of the industry. So they don't choose who their friends are. If it's hot, they cannot go to a cooler place. They're stuck. Yeah. But as you go closer and closer, even the little freedom that they have get smashed, So in the slaughter line, they cannot even go right or left. They can just go straight and back, right? You take away their ability to move. And at the end, in the slaughter itself, so the way they do it in Israel, you have a rotating box, which takes the animal and then turns it around, so the animal is rotating, and he's on his head.
The animal is upside down?
Upside down, yes. And then you have a metal bar that closes on the animal's neck. And then the animal waits for the slaughterer. The slaughterer comes and slashes his throat. And in those last seconds, I remember very clearly also, I saw a lot of these slaughterers when I worked undercover in an Israeli abattoir, mm-hmm. which back then was the biggest in Israel. That in those moments, the animal is ripped. All his freedom is taken away from him. He has nothing left, just one thing. He can blink his eyes in fear. But he has no way to express his fear. Sometimes right before the rotating box, they scream, they bellow. They cannot even bellow in those last seconds. They cannot do nothing. It's a very big animal. He's upside down. He cannot even move his neck. But you still see his eyes expressing the fear. So they go from very little freedom to zero freedom to being dead, to have their lives taken away from them.
Yeah, when you tell it like that and you see it like that, you can emphasize a lot better how it is to be in that scenario and being not able to move or anything like that.
Exactly. And also the angle of the footage serves that narrative, because if you have, let's say, a camera on the ceiling, which is very good and very important, of course, to have, you get a lot more information, right, about how many animals are slaughtered and how much do they use electric probes. And maybe it's better if you want a legal case against this facility. At the level of the eye of the animal, it's more about his individual journey. This is our endeavor to illuminate the personalities of animals and their characteristics, and also a more nuanced look at what are they feeling, what are they going through. And it doesn't have to be the harsh things, which also exist, of course. And this is what we're trying to do we call it animal storytelling. Animal storytelling. You tell a story of a particular individual, but that also highlights the story of the masses. I come from Israel, and the way that we understand atrocities usually in Israel, but I think it's true worldwide, the basic elements are the personal story and the numbers. So for me, the personal story is Anne Frank, the girl who wrote the diary and died in the Holocaust, and the 6 million, that's the number of Jews murdered in the Holocaust. And only the combination of these two, I think, creates the understanding of the atrocity. It's not only the 6 million, and it's not only the personal story. People have some kind of scale insensitivity. So it needs to be together. And it really bothered me that when you talk about atrocities that happen to humans, the media always tell stories of individuals. There was a boy in Ukraine, and he lived in a school, and he was 15, and he was starting to fall in love and meet the other sex, and then a rocket came and killed him. You can say, why did they tell me all of this about the boy? It doesn't matter. And if he didn't, if he was only 12 and had no interest in the other sex, it was okay to kill him? No, but after I told you that, something changed.
Yeah, now you have a personal connection with them and you feel more emotionally connected to the victim.
Yeah, that's the role of the media, to tell stories, sometimes to turn the numbers into stories. But with animals, you have no personal stories of victims, so there's a very, very big piece missing. And that is these stories of individuals. It's true about farmed animals. I think it's true about wild animals as well. You have trillions of wild animal casualties every year. Every year humans kill trillions, not billions, trillions. And you have no story of any individual. Almost. And I sometimes give lectures about what I call wild animal genocide. And I always ask the people, and a lot of times these are what they call environmentalists, give me a story of one. And only one person in all those lectures could give me one story of a bird that was hunted and survived, and now it lives well, it has a name, it's in a farm sanctuary, etc. But almost no one knows anything. I'm saying these are trillions of victims, trillions upon trillions of victims. And there is not even one story that people can tell in almost all the cases.
Do you know any personal stories of victims in animal genocide? If so, please leave them down below in the comments.
And the other thing I want to tell you is there's a thing that we call within animal storytelling personal outreach. I stood on the street, and instead of saying to someone, did you hear what happened to animals in the meat industry, or I like the slaughter industry better, I said, did you hear the story of Danny? And they were like, who's Danny? Oh, let me show you who Danny is. And then they see the story of Danny also through my eyes, because I was with him. I bore witness for 7 hours to his story. So we call it personal outreach, right? And then I showed them footage of Danny and the video and all of that stuff. It's just something that I thought could be also interesting to groups that are doing street outreach, like Anonymous for the Voiceless or We the Free or something like that. Then it doesn't have to be an animal that you put a camera on. It can be an animal that you know from a farm sanctuary, or let's say you know some dairy farm and you see a calf there in a cage. You come again, let's say 3-4 times, and you follow his story and you take pictures and you get attached to him, and then for what happened to him, you tell the story. So if suddenly you see that his horns are cut, so you don't say animals in the meat industry are going through, no, you say this animal specifically that I know, his name was Robbie, and then I came, and then I see a hole in his skull, and I'm like, what's going on here? What the fuck? And then look, it's different. It's personal. And the other way to use it is also in campaigns against companies. So think about not Milka is abusing animals, but Milka wants to kill Kylie. look, Kylie is an animal that we followed. We know her really well. We know her character. We can tell something about her. And Milka wants to kill her.
Does that work better in your experience, like with a specific individual?
So first, there are studies that show that it works better. Also in farmed animals, I think the identifiable victim effect or something like that. So you have that. I only did it once on the street. So it's hard for me to say that I can do statistics from it. But in this one time, yes, I felt that people were more receptive, more interested. I felt that it opens up something, definitely.
You also do other types of investigations before you did this type. How does that normally work?
Yeah, so we did. I mean, we're creating these cameras on animals, but we also have other projects which help activists in the investigative space. But we're also doing undercover investigations. We did an investigation in Australia. We did an investigation in India in the past. We were doing also investigations inside Israel. For example, we did last year a big investigation about a dog canal, which had 60 dog puppies slowly died because of an infection, which was hidden from the authorities because of a financial incentive to hide it from the authorities.
Did the authorities, when you reported it to them, did they do anything about it?
Well, it depends on the investigation. A lot of times the authorities in Israel are very slow to act, and many times they don't act at all. But sometimes the evidence are so convincing and so clear they're doing something about it. So, for example, the dog canal was closed and lost its permit to serve as a canal of the local authority, and 150 or so dogs were saved from it. So sometimes we get good results, not always. Unfortunately, in Israel, because now with the war and everything, as you can imagine, the media doesn't have a lot of attention spent to animals. It didn't before the war, but now it's even less. And the problem is in Israel that if you don't have a lot of media attention, the authorities are even doing less. So it's not easy, but we are working with authorities and we try to do what we can. Yeah.
Can you tell me about instances where the authorities didn't do anything about it and what you uncovered?
Let me tell you a small anecdote. It was a few years ago. We did an investigation about the biggest spaying and neutering company in Israel. They did it on street cats, and they got millions of shekels from the government. In dollars, it's more than $1 million a year from the government. I think it's something like $2 million, something like that a year. And we showed very clearly that some of the money they take to their pockets and they don't sterilize the animals. They don't spay and neuter them. And we also showed, so they're stealing from stray cats to steal from such a weak population. And even more than that, we showed that when they're doing it, it's horrible. Some cats wake up in the middle of the surgery. They're moving a needle from one cat to the other without any sterilization. So if one cat has HIV of cats, cat also has their kind of HIV. It moves from another. Horrible stuff that every vet that will see will say, holy crap. When we came first to the police station to talk about them, the police officer looked at us and said, but wait, this guy didn't steal from you, right? And I thought the police would take it more seriously also because he stole from the government. You know, it's the government's money. It's not only about animals, it's about fraud. And the police officer looked at us and said, I don't understand. He stole from you? And we said, no, he didn't steal anything from us. So we said, what do you care? Go home. Okay, afterwards we said, no, we care. We want to file charges. But this was his first reaction. It's an anecdote, but it's an anecdote which says something. And eventually, they still, a few years has gone by and they still haven't pressed charges against this person, though he's recorded saying to the investigator multiple times, write 20 cats when it's 10 cats, write 40 cats when it's only 20 cats. He was recorded multiple times, clearly saying to her, lie about the number of cats that were really spayed and neutered, but I don't know, the authorities are very creative in managing not to press charges and not to do the work. This is how it is in Israel with animals.
Yeah, and probably everywhere in the world.
Yeah, I think it depends, you know. I don't want to generalize a lot of places. And also in Israel, in some cases, they do their work okay. But I think generally speaking, still, it's all about people at the end, you know. You have some person who gets the case, and if he treats it like he would treat a murder case or a rape case or a robbery case, it will be very different. And you see the treatment, which is very, very light and not convincing, yeah.
Thanks so much to Ronan for being here and sharing his story with us. If you would like to try to do your own investigations with his hidden camera, he would be happy to help.
First of all, contact me if you really want to do it, and you're welcome to contact me. And of course, it depends on what country you are and what exactly your situation is, etc. But I would love to advise and help as much as I can. So if you want to get into it, then send me an email. It's ronen@sentientworld.org.
I wrote it down for you in the description down below. And I hope to see you in next week's episode.